play it all or nothing. Yeah, need it all in advance. The opposition know we're ready for it. Like a supper we eating, it won't be the last. Grind all the muscle, pull up. Parker right on the grass. We coming in, take over everything, run it up. Nothing holding me back. 3 in the wood, rushing. I don't like Dutch, don't even matter. You know I'm facing. When I roll a paper, I like to go double. Run up a check.
Welcome to Takeover, live from the crib, and we are back at it again. And guys, I know you guys are expecting this to be a whole NBA extravaganza, but we got things to talk about when it comes to college football. And I'm like, guys, you know, the NBA just started. I saw Tatum hit that shot. I saw John Morant drop 44. I saw the new look Atlanta Hawks all be in double digits with the Stars. I have seen that. We are going to hit you guys with it. You're going to get this NBA talk, but we got to start it off with this college football. Guys, the college football thing is set up. It's Alabama 1, Clemson 2, who is it? Ohio State 3, and Notre Dame 4. Did the committee get this one right?
So first off, I would like to say that I think the committee got it wrong again, because for starters, I don't think Ohio State should be in it, because when I go back to what Dabo said, when he said that a team that has not or has only played 6 games should not be considered to play in the college football playoffs. And I totally agree with him. And also, I think it's funny that the Big Ten kind of switched up the criteria to let Ohio State in, but that's neither here nor there. I know a lot of Texas A&M fans were mad that Notre Dame was able to get that spot, but when you think about it, you lost to Alabama, you beat Florida, but Florida also lost to LSU, who was not good this year at all. Florida played Alabama, and they lost, but I think they played a really good game against Alabama. I think they played Alabama better than any other team has played this whole season, but you still lost. So that one win that you get against Florida doesn't look as impressive as it did, because Florida is now a 3-loss team. Now, some things I take into consideration when I think about the rankings, I think about conference championships, I think about common opponents, and I think about the strength for the schedule. Notre Dame and Texas A&M both lost their conference championships. So are we completely neglecting the importance of that, being that Notre Dame, a team who lost their conference championship, can still be in that spot? And I'm also thinking about other undefeated teams like Cincinnati and Coastal Carolina, who work just as hard as the other teams, and they're undefeated as well. When you think about a team like Alabama or Ohio State or Clemson, if they were to be undefeated, even if they lose a game or two, they're still going to be able to get in just because of their name. And these teams work just as hard. And I know people will be like, well, I don't want to see Cincinnati play Alabama, and I don't want to see Coastal Carolina play Alabama. Well, when you think about it, I'm looking at the Notre Dame versus Alabama game. I think that's a win for Alabama. I don't think that's a very compelling game to watch to me, or neither will the Texas A&M game. So I think if you're going to have that matchup, why not put a team that's lesser known in that spot so they can get more ratings, so they can get more funds into their program, so that they can put those funds back into their program and invest so they can become a better team, so we won't have to see the same teams over and over and over again.
I'm going to start my take with a few questions for you specifically, Dee. You're not necessarily a fan currently, but you were a fan at one point of pro wrestling, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so as we all know, professional wrestling is predetermined, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to steal a line from my father here, so shout out, Dad. This is from you. You've been saying this for years. The reason professional wrestling is the greatest sport in the world is because it is the only one that lets you know up front that everything you see happening in front of it is predetermined and pre-decided behind the scenes.
Yeah.
This is why I don't like college football the way that I like NFL football, all right? The committee knew the 4 teams it wanted to get in. The committee already knew it wanted the 4 biggest possible names that they could get, and they got it by any means possible. Shout out AMP. Cincinnati was 55th out of 127 in strength of schedule, and they were 3rd in simple rating system, which takes into consideration both strength of schedule and margin of victory. Ohio State, in those same 2 metrics, they were 62nd and 4th. So by both of these metrics, Ohio State was not a better team than Cincinnati. On top of that, watching Ohio State play, they did not play a complete game the entire year. They needed helped to beat Northwestern. The only reason they beat Northwestern was because Trey Sermon went for 330 yards and Northwestern's offense was decidedly bad. And they turned it over at the worst times and they couldn't finish drives. How can you justify putting that team over Cincinnati or Texas A&M, who A&M, I can understand why they might try to keep them out because they didn't play well against Alabama. And if they got in as the 4 seed, they would have had to play Alabama again. And that's a potential slaughter waiting to happen. But Cincinnati had a legitimate argument. And not only am I mad about the fact they didn't make it, I'm mad about the fact that a week ago, they dropped to number 9. They dropped to number 9 for no reason other than they haven't played since November 21st. You know who else hadn't played since November 21st around that time? Ohio State. And where did they stay the entire time? Number 4. There's no other way to put it. Cincinnati had a better strength of schedule. They had a better overall resume, and they actually played more than 5 games. And I'm not even going to get into the fact that the Big Ten completely changed their rules that they predetermined before the season just so they can get the darlings in. So this was predetermined. The committee knew exactly who they wanted to get in, and it's ridiculous that they're trying to make it sound like it was actually deliberated on. They had this ranking set the moment that Clemson beat Notre Dame. They made it easy for them.
All right. Before I nail in who I thought should have really been the top 4, I want to address your guys' Cincinnati and Coastal Carolina comments. I was kind of on the same fence of like these smaller teams should get a chance, but they were only geared towards their conferences this year. But in past years, the smaller teams could play bigger teams. Coastal Carolina can schedule Ohio State if they wanted to. Cincinnati could schedule an Alabama if they wanted to. UCF was bragging about how they should have been first. So my thing is for these smaller schools, it goes both ways. Don't call out the big dogs if you're not ready to schedule them. Please don't call out a LSU if you're not ready to schedule them. And these smaller schools don't do that. So before we all jump on the bandwagon of they should have done this, they should have done that, they got a chance to schedule these teams. And they don't take the money to play Alabama week 1. Duke does, and they get blown out. So if these teams have to want to make this huge reign of we should be in, schedule them. Schedule Alabama, schedule Ohio State, schedule Clemson. See what you can do. Why not? That's the only thing I have to address about the Cincinnati Coastal Carolina thing. But with the Ohio State thing, this was clear robbery. We don't even know who Ohio State is. They haven't really played anybody. They beat a 2-win Penn State team by not even a large margin. And then on the Northwestern game, it was 10-6 going into halftime. This team does not look impressive. And to cap it off, I don't even think Ohio State is a top 6 team in college football. I think that the ranking should have been Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Cincinnati, and I would still put Florida ahead of Ohio State. I even because they play Alabama, I think the tightest, and they play those guys the best. I think those are the top 6 teams in college football. Ohio State got that spot because their name is legit Ohio State. That's the only reason that they were in this, and I feel like we're gonna get the result that we're probably gonna deserve. Clemson, I feel like, is going to blow out Ohio State. Alabama is going to beat Notre Dame, and we're going to get Cleveland versus Golden State Part 3. We're going to get the same 2 teams Part 5. We're going to get the same 2 teams, and it's not going to be as interesting. And I think it's going to end up draining college football ratings because we're going to keep seeing the same teams over and over and over and over again. I definitely think Texas A&M should have been in there. There's not been a lot of 9-1, only 1 loss SEC teams to not go to the playoff, and they have to go through that grinding SEC schedule. They beat Florida. I feel like they have, honestly, Texas A&M may have a better resume than Notre Dame does. And I'm saying this because they beat Clemson without Trevor Lawrence. So, I mean, it gets really dicey, but the only thing that messes up is Ohio State because we don't know who these guys are. They've only won 6 games. They haven't looked impressive in the 6 games. I can't put them in my top 4.
I would like to respond to first of all, brief side rant. I cannot believe that Florida only dropped 1 spot after losing to 3-5 LSU, but that's a matter for another time because that's gone and done with. Second of all, I want to say, you said that these mid-majors could schedule Ohio State. Really? No, they couldn't. Because Ohio State had a bunch of COVID issues.
No, I'm saying in past years, not this year. I'm not counting this year because I said you have to play all conference this year. I said in past years you could.
In past years they could have been, but I thought you were talking about this specific year.
I said in past years
because they was having COVID issues down the stretch when you needed that schedule.
Correct.
And we saw what happened when Coastal Carolina scheduled BYU and took them on. They beat them pretty bad. I don't think Coastal Carolina had an argument to get in personally, but I feel like Cincinnati should have been in. I feel like for the parity, because we've seen all four of these teams in there before. The reason I love the NFL and the MLB is because there's a lot of parity in those leagues. You see different teams trying to get to the top every year. I mean, typically you have like relatively the same teams around the top, but every year you always have some team that falls off and some team that rises up. And in college football, you don't see that. You see Alabama and Clemson at the top every single year, and every now and then you get an LSU that comes in and has a transcendent offensive season, is able to beat people. But other than that, it's always Alabama, Clemson, and I don't like it because there's nothing else for me to watch.
Well, recruiting wins championships, and I think Dabo and Nick do it the best.
Yeah, because they got the most money to spend.
Yeah.
Exactly. So when these, like you said, recruiting is important, but these teams won't be able to get those funds that they could use for recruiting if they're never put in the position to get that recognition.
Schedule them. Like I said, schedule them. Next year, if we don't have COVID, please tell Cincinnati, please tell Coastal Carolina, UCF, all those undefeated teams, schedule a top dog. And if they get beat the brakes off of week 1, then what are we arguing about? I feel like that has to be a point as well. Also, I feel like if Ohio State, Texas A&M, they both had a game that were both postponed. If they somehow got a play-in game between those two, I would have liked to see it. But that's definitely going to wrap up this segment. And so next thing we're going to do, we have a fan submission, another one from my guy Koa talking about the LA Rams.
What's up, Takeover? My name is Koa Ben Israel, and this is my first video, and not the last. And this one is about the dark horse team out of the NFC in the playoffs. And that team to me is the Los Angeles Rams. I think that with the strong defense, especially on the D line with Aaron Donald, teams literally game plan to go opposite of his side. I think with that being the forefront, and you have Jalen Ramsey. So you have arguably two of the best defensive players on one team leading that defense at an elite level. I think that would be a scary team that no one wants to see. They're playing their best football around the right time. They're getting hot. And I know the only question mark is Jared Goff, if he's going to choke or if he's going to not be enough to put them over the hump. But I think if you can steadily protect him, if you can run the ball with Cam Akers like we got a little glimpse of, and the most underrated receiver in the league to me is Cooper Kupp, and Robert Woods isn't a scrub. So I think with all those factors included, I think the Bucs don't want to see him, the Seahawks don't. A lot of teams would not want to see the Rams. I'd like to see y'all's opinion on that.
All right, guys. What do we think about this take? It's in poor taste. Hold on, Cole. We know you sent this last week. They lost this week to the New York Jets. It looks real bad. Guys, what do we think?
Okay. So I'm going to say right now, Koa, I was so ready to agree with you. And I feel like everything you say is still relatively true. But the biggest question that I always have with the Los Angeles Rams, and it goes back to when they went to the Super Bowl, because the NFL is a quarterback-driven league, you have to have a great quarterback. And Jared Goff, in my humble opinion, is not even a good quarterback. They have won in spite of Jared Goff. And while I agree that their defense is laden with talent, they have arguably the two top defenders in the league right now. They have the one true lockdown corner and the most disruptive pass rushing force. And as you see, all the great receivers, good run game, all that great stuff. The buck stops with the quarterback. And I don't trust Jared Goff to win me a regular season game, let alone a playoff game. And we saw with the Jets, he couldn't do it. He couldn't bring it home. So I agree that they would be a tough matchup because it's going to be tough to score on them, but it's not tough to stop Jared Goff. You saw the Patriots absolutely destroyed him in the Super Bowl, and he hasn't gotten better. He's arguably gotten worse. He would be the most overpaid quarterback in the NFL if Carson Wentz wasn't a thing. I can't really agree with your take in its entirety.
Well, like Josh said again, like Jared Goff is the problem. And the thing is about football now, which I kind of hate to agree with, is offense wins championships now. So if you don't have that elite quarterback and you don't have that elite system, you're not going to win games. As good as that defense is, by land with Aaron Donald and by air with Jalen Ramsey, that defense is locked down anybody. But I've seen great defenses not have the impact that a great offense could. We see that with the Bears all the time. We rave about Khalil Mack and the rest of those guys. They don't have a quarterback. And I feel like Jared Goff is going to go through the same struggles. He lost to the New York Jets. Sam Darnold and the Jets, that may be the worst team playing football, like right now.
It is.
And he lost to that team. You can't really do that. And I feel like he has everything on a silver platter. I think Cam Akers is a baller. I think Cooper Kupp is underrated. Sean McVay is a maestro, but the quarterback can't get it done. At the end of the day, when they run into the teams like the New Orleans Saints, the Green Bay Packers, those teams are going to be heavily loaded on offense. Can you match? And I don't believe they can.
Josh had literally took everything I was going to say, but then Cam, you just came in and took everything else. So there's nothing really left for me to say, but I will say I'm looking at all the other teams and I'm looking at their schedules and I'm looking at what the Rams have left. They have Seattle, which I think they will lose that one, and they go against the Cardinals. And I'm looking at a team that I picked to go that was a sleeper, which was the Seahawks. So, yeah, they have the 49ers next. So I'm just looking at stuff like that. I'm looking at the schedules and no. And I'm also looking at all the other heavy hitters in their division.
Well, guys, that is going to wrap up our show. I know it was a short one compared to last week. We know we gave you that 30-piece last week, so we're going to shorten it up. You know what I'm saying? It's Christmas time.
Personally, I blame the Sanders family in general because Cam's verbosity comes from a very honest place. So... But don't worry, once we have another special guest that may or may not be coming on the show, and it'll explain a lot about me. So just keep that in mind.
Cliffhanger. So you guys have anything left to say?
Shout out Trey Young.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Whatever. Nah, shout out Trey Young, man. He's about to bring a title to Atlanta. Give him time.
Yeah, that's what's not gonna happen. See, look, when we start telling lies on this show, even through Zoom, it gets real bad. So I'm gonna end it here so we can stop lying to the public, like Josh does almost every day. So let's not do that. But Merry Christmas to you guys. Merry Christmas from Takeover. We will see you guys next week.
Hey, champ. Yeah, we play it all in night. Yeah, need it all in advance. The opposition know we're ready for it. Like a supper we eating, it won't be the last. Grind all the muscle, pull up. Parker right on the grass, we coming in, take over everything, run it up, nothing holding me back, 3 in the wood, rushing. I don't like Dutch, don't even matter, you know I'm a facing when I roll a paper, I like